section 1 through 6. We ready? 1 through 6? Anyone have a preference? Dorothea? Number 3? Okay, so let's take a look at number 3. Now, these are all in standard form for you, which are the ones when we did the warm-up that we kind of thought were the easiest ones. But what's weird about these is the numbers do not come out pretty, okay? In fact, I should have a calculator out so I can figure out exactly how not pretty they are. So, when I go to look for the X-intercept, what do I know? Y is 0. That's the same answer every time. How many times have I asked you that question so far? 1,000, right? It's going to be like 3,000 more, all right, by the end of this week, and probably more before the end of the semester. So, at the X-intercept, Y is equal to 0, which means I can say, okay, now I don't have a Y anymore. So now I just have 8X equals negative 21. All right, and then what would I do to solve? Yeah, divide. So I'm going to do negative 21 divided by 8. And I get that my X-intercept is at negative 2.625. And these may have thrown you off because, like I said, the numbers are not pretty. Okay, they're kind of ugly. But that would be my X-intercept. And then what do I do for my Y-intercept? X is 0. So now my X is gone. Just remember, what kind of 3 is that? It is negative. So negative 3y and negative 21, what's my Y-intercept? I didn't hear it with the confidence I wanted to hear it with. 7, positive 7. Negative 21 divided by negative 3. Okay, so that's what that section wanted you to do. Are you good on that top part? Okay, so how about 7 through 14? Was that kind of killer? Okay, this section wanted you to write it in slope-intercept form. Someone raise your hand and tell me what slope-intercept form looks like. Callista? Okay, so we want it to look like this when we're done. Y equals mx plus b. The big key to slope-intercept form is that the y is by itself. Okay, so that's kind of our goal. Really what we're doing here is solving for y. So in this first one, what do I want to get rid of first? X. If I'm trying to get y by itself, let's get rid of x. How do you want to get rid of x? Okay, the x is positive, so I'm going to subtract an x and subtract an x. So now I'm left with negative y. Just don't forget that that's a negative y. And over here, normally I would just write this as 5 minus x, but in my answer, I want my x to come first, so I'm going to put the x first. But watch your negative signs here. The negative sign is attached to the x, so I'm going to keep it attached to the x. And then what kind of 5 is that? Positive, so it's going to be negative x plus 5. Am I done?
No.
What do I still need to get rid of?
Negative.
Okay. Now, that negative is really like a negative 1. Okay? So what you're really going to do is divide everything by negative 1. But what does dividing by negative 1 do to a number?
Just makes it negative.
Yeah, it just switches the sign, right? Like 5 divided by negative 1 would give you negative 5. What's negative 2 divided by negative 1? Positive 2, right? So dividing by negative 1 doesn't change the number. It just changes whether it's positive or negative. So really all that's going to happen is everything is going to switch signs. If this becomes a positive y, this is going to become a positive x, and this is going to become a negative 5. But if you actually wanted to write it out as dividing by negative 1, you could, if that was helpful to you. Am I now in the right form? I am. It doesn't quite look like it because it looks like I don't have an m number, but my m number is just a 1. Okay, so I am in the right form. Let's pick one more of those to do. So from 7 to 14, one more. Danielle?
10.
Number 10. Okay. The 0 is probably freaking you out a little bit. What do we get rid of first in number 10? Again, we're trying to get y by itself. So let's get rid of x. How do you want to do it? Subtract x. Subtract x. Let's see. Negative 4y. For just a second over here, I'm going to write this like this. Do I really need to write the 0? I really don't. Okay, but I'm going to write it just so you can see how it looks just like the other one. Now what do I do over here? Okay, divide by negative 4. That means I divide everything by negative 4. Okay, so now this is gone. You really have a 1 here in front of this x. So see how I have negative 1 over negative 4? That doesn't divide nicely. I would leave it as a fraction because that's your slope, and we like our slopes to be fractions. But what can I do to make it look nicer?
Get rid of the negatives.
Yeah, I've got a negative and a negative, right? So I can make that a positive. So in my final answer, I'm going to make it 1/4 x. And then what does this equal? 0, just 0. So do I really need to write the 0? No. If you really wanted to, you could write it as 1/4 x plus 0. But I'm okay with you just leaving it like this. Okay. So in this whole section, your whole goal is just to rearrange the equation to get y by itself. You good on that? Okay, let's go to the back of that with the graphs. This wants you to graph using the intercepts. Okay, Michael? 15. Okay. So first thing I need is I need the intercepts to be able to graph with the intercepts. Okay? So at the x-intercept, y is equal to 0, right? So I would have 3x equals negative 2. I can kind of see why you would think this one's ugly. What's going to happen when I divide here?
negative 2/3.
It'd be negative 2/3, yep. I'm hearing a what? Let me write that out. So if I put a 0 in for y, it would look like this. Where do I have some space? 3x minus 0 equals negative 2, which really the minus 0 I don't really need. So I have 3x equals negative 2. And then to solve, I would divide by 3. So I would end up with x equals negative 2/3. Seeing where that comes from now? So that's my x-intercept. For my y-intercept, what do I do? Callista?
Why wouldn't you do it in the form y equals mx plus b?
You could, if you wanted to. The directions here said to graph by plotting the intercepts. Okay? So I'm practicing, instead of putting it in slope-intercept form, I want you to get some practice with finding the intercepts and just putting the intercepts on the graph to be able to graph it.
Oh,
It would give you the exact same line if you did it the other way. Okay? And when it comes down to like chapter test, I don't care which way you use. I'm just going to say graph this line. Okay? So if you want to do mx plus b, that's okay too. Okay. If I want the y-intercept, what do I do? We're losing our enthusiasm. When I want y, what do I do?
Put a 0 when you're out.
Okay. Some of us are enthusiastic. So I have negative y equals negative 2. What does that mean y equals? Careful. Okay. Negative y equals negative 2. What do I do to get rid of this negative sign? Say it again with some confidence.
Divide by 1.
Divide by
-1.
-1. So this is gone. Negative 2 divided by -1 would be positive 2. So now to graph with the intercepts, here's what that means. If I said my x-intercept is negative 2/3, that means that my line is going to cross at negative 2/3, which is going to be like between 0 and -1-ish. Okay, that one's kind of hard to estimate. And then my y-intercept is at 2, so I know I'm going to cross the y-axis at 2. And then from there, let's see, my line's going to look something like this. Okay. So that's what this section wanted you to do, is it wanted you to find the intercepts, put both intercepts on the graph, and then connect them. Okay? Do you want to do another one of these? Calista?
if you put number 17 and y equals mx plus b, like, how would you do that?
Yeah. So what's missing there? What piece?
The x.
The x, right? So I would put a 0 where the x should be. So I would say y equals 0x plus 4. And then you would start at 4, go up 0 over 1. Okay? Thinking about this from an intercept perspective, what do we know about the intercepts here? Turn to your neighbor. Figure out the x-intercept and the y-intercept with your neighbor of y equals 4. Okay. Talk about your reasoning. Okay, raise your hand if your partner knows the x-intercept, knows how to get the x-intercept. Okay, who actually wants to give me an answer? Where's the x-intercept on this graph? Christian. There is none, right? This one does not have an x-intercept. And I want that to be a super quick thing for you. I want you to be able to look at that equation and say, oh, that one doesn't have an x-intercept because there's no x in there. Okay, what's my y-intercept? 4. So I need to somehow draw a line that crosses the y-axis at 4 and doesn't cross the x-axis. Yep, there you go. It's a horizontal line. Okay? It's a horizontal line because it never crosses the x-axis. Okay? So I would love for you to get to the point where you see y equals a number and you just think, oh, that's a horizontal line and the slope is 0 and it doesn't have an x-intercept. Okay, you want to try to put all of those things together. But until then, either calculate the intercepts yourself first or write it in slope-intercept form first. Does that make sense? Okay. Do we feel like we need another day to go back to this assignment? Yeah. Like, do you need to finish it? Yeah. Megan, did you have another question? 19? Okay. So, intercepts real quickly on 19. Where's my x-intercept going to be? Oh, and I can see why this one's tough. This was mean of me. What's my x-intercept at? Negative 12, right? Because you put a 0 in for y. And then my y-intercept would be at negative 3 because my x is gone, so I would have 4y equals negative 12. So here's what I would do. I know your graph is numbered for you. I would count by 2s. Thank you for asking about this one. So I would ignore the numbering on the graph that's there already, and I would count by 2s. Because then my x-intercept at negative 12 would actually be here. And my y-intercept of negative 3, let's see, this would be negative 2, negative 3 would be like halfway in between here. And it would look like this. Well, except with a straighter line. Okay? If you did not, if you didn't do that, if you maybe did slope-intercept form on this one, let's see, what would that look like? So if I subtracted x from both sides, I would have 4y equals negative x minus 12. And then I would divide everything by 4. So I would have y equals negative 1/4 x minus 3. And then when you go to graph that one, supposing that you didn't count by 2s this time, your y-intercept would be at negative 3, and you would go down 1 and over 4, which really it shouldn't be crossing with this line, but my line's just drawn really badly. Really badly. It should go through. Yeah. So it would look something like this. Let's see. Okay. But it wouldn't cross the x-axis on this graph. Okay, it would eventually, but just not on the picture that you have. And really, it should run parallel to my one that I have drawn there, but my line's just drawn really terribly. I apologize for that. Okay? So either way you go on that one would have been okay with me. Good? All right, let's take out notes. Lesson for today is